Welcome back, everybody, to the show for below average bettors by below average bettors. That's right, we're back. It's the Nosebleeds coming at you. Oh, why do you do that every time? Ugh. Just stop.
Sorry.
A week off. I know there was some people that were like, hey, you guys could bet on Bellator, right? You guys could bet on Eagle FC, right? Well, come on, guys.
Not after how UFC 270
yeah,
went.
we're gonna here in a second. We're gonna show you something that's gonna make you say otherwise. But
Yeah.
it's good to be back.
Of course.
I wish we could come back under better circumstances for the weather outside.
Yes.
Dominic, I hope you're staying safe over there, a couple states away.
Mm-hmm.
I believe we're both going to be under the same sort of excruciating circumstances as an ice storm is a brewing.
Oh, yes. It's coming in hot. Well, it's coming in cold, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's quite hot on our tails right now.
Yes.
But I'm curious, Dominic, because, we don't get, snow days anymore,
No,
Not in the
real life now.
not in the sense of the way it used to be, right?
Yeah.
I mean, kids these days don't understand. Like now they get a text on their phone and they're just home for the rest of the day. We used to sit in front of our TVs watching the news like it was the damn NBA draft and we were just looking for
waiting on our thing to beat. It was like the Royal Rumble. We were number 30 of our school.
And whenever our school wasn't on there, we're like, oh, come on, what's the big idea here?
Then you're like, oh, shit, I have to go to school in 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I guess I better get dressed then. But, yeah, and then it got to a point where in high school, one of our football coaches was like one of the people who had the biggest say.
Yeah, that's true.
Because he was like, he oversaw the busing.
Yeah.
So if he felt like it was too bad out, he would let the superintendent know, who would then put that in.
Yeah.
So I would pretty much any time it snowed like a little bit, I would abuse his line. Like in the morning, I'd be like, "You better fucking cancel school. Like, do the right thing."
Yeah.
And then I'd just complain if he wouldn't. But
you're right.
But the point is, Dominic, we don't get snow days anymore. My work's letting me work from home tomorrow and Friday. Like they kind of just told everybody, like we're closing down the plant.
Yeah.
Go home, work from home. But I'm still working. So back in the day, back when you used to have snow days, Dominic, what was like a typical snow day for you?
Ooh, man. Way back in the day when I was real little, we're talking elementary and intermediate school, dude, I'd probably just sit at the kitchen table, our old wooden circle table, and play with wrestlers all day, if I'm being honest with you. But then as I got older, I mean, it depended on the amount of snow, right? If there was a good amount, maybe I'd go out with my little sister. We'd build a snowman. I really wasn't good at making snowmen, though. Maybe I never was one to sled, but we didn't live in a neighborhood with a hill. So, yeah, really, it was never nothing crazy outside of that. What about you?
So you played with dolls. That's okay. I played with them too. But yeah, I mean, I probably did a little bit of that. I seem to remember more vividly playing video games when I would.
Oh yeah, duh. Why did I just forget
I know,
that
because
one?
Considering you're the gamer of the
yeah,
two of us.
definitely that's number 3. Yeah.
But I have vivid I just remember vividly, and you know what I would remember more than anything. I'm a bit of a night owl as it is.
Yes, you.
So
are.
and I've always been that way. I've always been that way. So being in middle school, intermediate, wherever, doesn't matter, I would be staying up late and I'd be looking out my window and I'd see how snowy it was. And a part of me would just I would kind of just say, fuck it, and just assume.
You're like, yeah, I know we ain't going. Yeah.
So then I'd just start gaming through the night, you know, Madden, 2K, whatever it was. And most of the time I called my shot and it went in. But there was probably a time or two where I'd be still awake when
you had some swaggy P 3-point shot moments.
And then mom would be like, hey, it's time to, get in the shower and stuff. And I'd be like,
huh?
And I'd just be like, I'd go force myself getting sick and stuff like that. But anyways, I know that's not what you guys came here for. But I'm really just trying to.
We're delaying what we. Yes, exactly.
But Dominic, pull it up. The recap for UFC 270.
Oh boy.
We had a week to make excuses. We had a week off, so we could make any sort of excuses for why things went so wrong, Dominic.
Oh boy.
Overall, for the week of UFC 270, we went nearly -3 units.
Ooh-wee.
And that
A lot of red X's on there.
That hurt our standing for the year. I mean, now
Yes.
we're on the negative. We're in the red.
Yes.
I mean, how could people ever trust our advice, which they shouldn't, by the way? Please bet responsibly.
Yes.
But how could anybody take our picks
Right.
with results like these?
Yeah, horrendous.
So I need to know what happened from your end. What's shocked you based off of the results as they unfolded?
What shocked me most was just the main event in general. For both of us to bet on opposite men and neither person win, I mean, that sums up UFC 270 if you ask me.
No doubt about it. Main event,
I mean,
biggest shocker.
Yeah, like I'm taking Cyril Gane, and I knew it was risky for him to get a finish. Like I figured if he won, it would likely be decision, but I figured at plus 150, that's nice odds. Well, obviously that didn't happen. But then Noah sees plus 145 on a Francis KO. Hello, you're never going to see those types of odds again. Well, maybe you will, as a matter of fact, because he wins the fight via decision. So that main event right there, giving us 2 X's. I mean, come on.
Yeah, the lone bright spot. I'm going to give myself a little
Yes,
credit.
point it out there.
Moreno Figgy to go to distance. Me and Dominic literally
Went against each other.
opposite ends
Someone
of
had
the
to win,
spectrum.
someone had to lose.
But man, that looked dicey at times. Those guys went to war again. Not quite as impactful as the first fight in terms of like feeling like the fight could end at any moment. But overall, still, I was on the edge of my seat. I mean,
Yes.
I was
Butthole
what a
was
great,
clenched.
Great fight, yeah. And I mean, look, I know it's a sensitive subject around here to talk that to say anything negative about a fighter, but I mean, come on, Dominic, you gotta have some anger built up towards Genaro Valdez.
The only thing keeping me from being angry at the poor fella was, holy shit, he went out swinging. No, I mean, you want to talk about butthole being clenched. That for that whole round that it lasted, dude, I was going nuts. He was under pressure and under fire as soon as that fight started. Valdez was against Matt Frevola. And immediately I'm like, well, shit, out goes the parlay. But then he'd swing back and Frevola would look injured. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're telling me there's a chance. But then after, 17 knockdowns, the ref finally stepped in and called the fight off. And Valdez went out swinging. And I'm telling you right now, Noah, because of that performance, I'm not giving up on him yet. There's going to be another bet from D-Dog, from Dominic, on Genaro Valdez in the future.
Well, hey, I get it. He did go out on his shield. He knew that Dominic had the money on him, had the parlay plus 875 riding on his victory. Man, yes. I mean, he took a beating. I mean, that was 5 knockdowns in like 2.5 minutes.
Well, you said the ref had money on him, too.
I think the ref did have money on him. Old Mike Beltran, I think he did. But
yeah, that's what I got.
I will, and I asked Dominic, I'm like, come on, Dom, that fight should have been stopped earlier. And he was like, not budging, the typical bettor right there.
Yeah.
But get this off the screen. I'm tired of looking at it.
We got to get this off.
Let's talk about the week that is, the weekend that's coming up. UFC Vegas 47, Dominic. We start with the main event, Moneyline.
There it is.
It's time for a bounce back.
I sure hope so.
Sean Strickland going up against Jack Hermansson. Strickland right now minus 230. Hermansson slightly closing, but still a pretty significant plus 185 underdog. So I guess the question as of now, Dominic, is just with this fight, it's pretty clear that people are siding with Strickland with the momentum. Mm-hmm. He looked really good against Uriah Hall. He's really just been on a nice run. He's kind of rose to prominence strictly off of his winning streak. His losses, nobody really remembers. I don't even think people realize this guy fought Kamaru Usman once upon a time.
Yeah.
While Jack Hermansson's losses have been more high-profiled, he did have a nice win against Edmund Shabazian, but only one win. Before that he had a couple, or maybe just the one tough loss to Marvin Vettori, but a war nonetheless. What do you see from this fight? Do you feel like those odds kind of represent where these two guys stand right now?
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of. I mean, it is similar and it's not similar at the same time. More so, Strickland's momentum and having that over 2-1 favorite odds is reminding me of how Giga Chikadze was over a 2-1 favorite against Calvin Kattar. And I know that Kattar and Hermansson in different spaces. I understand that. But for Strickland, that's what it reminds me of. And to your point, Noah, when you talk about like his competition and some stuff going under the radar, I saw a stat out there today. Shout out to our boys at MMA On Point. We love these fellas. They put out a graphic. Sean Strickland is 17-0 at middleweight. He's never lost at 185 pounds.
I
in his
did not
career.
know that. Didn't know that. That's
So,
crazy.
I mean, and he's 24-3 overall. So there's that for you. So, I mean, this guy, he's just, what do you always call him, a technical brawler, right? And he just presses forward. He can finish, but usually, like, he gets a lot of decision victories. So the minus 230, yes, it's the momentum. I mean, he's on a 5-fight win streak right now. For Hermansson, he has been kind of going back and forth, but it's been with some of the toughest guys in the division. So plus 185, yes, it is a pretty steep dog, but it does make sense overall. I'm not necessarily surprised by these main event odds.
Yeah, I have to agree with you slightly. I mean, Jack Hermansson, sorry, you guys, I'm typing something while I need to focus, right? But
Come on, Noah.
Jack Hermansson himself was surprised at the odds. And I was a little I wasn't surprised actually at all with the odds. I figured Strickland would be a pretty significant favorite, at least significant to the point where you're talking 2-1.
Yeah.
To me, that's significant enough for a main event fight, 6 versus 7. But I don't think that quite illustrates this matchup at all. I mean, both guys are very talented in different ways. You know, Hermansson, much more comfortable, kind of in the grappling realm. Strickland, technical brawler, a guy that loves to stand and bang on the feet.
Yeah.
And their personalities are interesting as well. They're both quite characters. But while both guys can, like you said, finish a fight, they have the skills to do so. Strickland has the power. Hermansson has the submission ability. But both are so durable and both are pretty high IQ fighters considering their personality types, that they do tend to focus more on kind of wearing down their opponents, breaking them down, and winning a decision. Sometimes a very lopsided decision. Like I said, Uriah Hall versus Sean Strickland, very lopsided. Hermansson had a pretty lopsided decision against Edmund Shabazian. It's the way it goes sometimes. However, I think this fight's very close.
It's such an odd matchup, you know?
And you know, I'm going to be talking about this fight multiple times on this show, not to spoil anything, but I really have a hard time seeing a finish in this fight. And maybe for some of you, you're like, what? Like, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if either guy got a finish. But I think that would say a significant amount about where they are in their career if they get a finish here. I mean, if Strickland knocks out Hermansson, or if Hermansson subs Sean Strickland, I think that does wonders for their career.
Yes.
So right now, I think that both guys are going to go to a decision, trying to force their game plan. I think it's going to be a very close fight. Momentum swings around, and it's really going to come down to a 4th or 5th round. Who wants it more? Who has the better cardio? Who's holding up better? And someone's going to get a pretty close decision win in my eyes. So I don't think the odds quite, represent that. But that's just the way it is when Hermansson's had more high-profile losses. I didn't know that about Sean Strickland, that he's been perfect at middleweight. I mean, he looks damn good, too. He hasn't really... I mean, I think the level of competition for Hermansson's still a little higher. You know, the resume,
for sure.
He's fought higher-level opponents. But overall, I mean, you can only fight who's in front of you. And Sean Strickland's looked fantastic, ever since he's been on our radar. So it's going to be a telling fight for sure.
Yeah, and I do like the point you make to where, like, in terms of, like, if one of these guys do get a finish, these are two guys that haven't fought for the title. They're fresh matchups. And in a division that is not stale, but just one of the lesser exciting men's divisions in the UFC, a big statement win, even if it is a decision, say it's a dominant one at that, can really do a lot for either one of these guys, being that they could be a fresh matchup and kind of catapult them in there with the other title contenders.
We'll be talking about this one a little bit more, but let's move on to the pick'em fight of the week. This is the fight with the closest odds as it stands today. There's a couple that were very close to this one, So this may actually change by the time
Yeah.
the books close. But as it stands right now, Chidi and Njokuani plus 100 going up against Marc-Andre Barriault minus 122. This is Chidi's UFC debut coming off the Contender Series. He had a very impressive showing there. 33 years old, going up against Marc-Andre, who's been in there a couple times. So, to you, Dominic, do you kind of side with the potential of Chidi, even though he is 33, but looks very explosive, very comfortable, very well-rounded in the Contender? Or do you side with someone who's kind of proven they can do it at a UFC level?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we love our Contender Series guys, and yes, it is his UFC debut, but overall, I mean, at 20-7, he has more professional fights, Chidi that is, than Marc-Andre. So it is an interesting matchup where they're both very experienced, but will the UFC, he's 2-3 with one no contest. Marc-Andre brought inside the UFC. So will that higher level experience kind of give him the edge in this one? I mean, stylistically, it's interesting too. Chidi's 6'3" with 80-inch reach. He's got a 6-inch reach advantage over Marc-Andre. That's very big, especially for a weight class like this. And he's got a 2-inch height advantage as well. Both of them are on 2-fight win streaks. So, especially for Marc-Andre, he started 0-3 in the UFC, but they kept him around seemingly for a reason, you would think. And now he's tallied off 2 in a row, a chance to break it even here in his UFC record. But Chidi, again, I am leaning more toward him. We love the Contender Series guys, and at plus 100, a little bit of a dog factor as well. This is an interesting stylistic fight.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but Chidi got his win via submission on the Contender Series. So,
if I'm not mistaken, yeah.
I don't know what his what that says for him. Like I don't have his record in front of me. Like what his ratio is submission to KO.
12 knockouts, 1 submission.
So that was the first submission of his career. Because that's what I always kind of assumed he was more of a striker.
Yeah.
I will say, I don't know how much value you put on that submission win, but he looked very comfortable everywhere the fight went. Like, don't let it fool you. This guy might be a pure striker, but when that fight went to the ground, he did not look phased at all. Yeah. So I tend to agree with you, even though this is a debut. You're going up against a guy with 5 or 6 UFC fights up to this point. That's a tough task to take on, no matter what his record is. But I side with the guy that has more weapons, and it seems like right now Chidi and Njokuani might be the more well-rounded of the two.
I like it.
And next, the underdog of the week. This is for me and Dom. We each give our pick. The guy on the line, who on the underdogs, who in the plus money do we like the most? And I'm going to actually take this one first, Dominic, just to switch things up. For me, it is Jack Hermansson, the main event. That's why I'm going first. Just save everyone the time. I do like Jack Hermansson at plus 185. That's not one of my plays personally this week because I do think this is a very close fight. But I was looking at the underdogs and I wanted someone that just jumped out to me and was like, I love this guy. Like, this is like high upset potential. And for as good of a sleeper of a card as this one is, I didn't see a lot of that on here, if I'm being honest. There wasn't a lot that like jumped out to me as far as on the money line, and I'm just like, hell yes, I need to pick this guy right now. But Jack Hermansson, considering how much closer I think this fight is, I mean, I think plus 185 is kind of, I mean, that's kind of not, I don't want to say a steal, but it's especially if he gets a win in the fashion that he's capable of, it's going to be a hard while before we see him with these kind of underdog odds moving forward.
Yeah, I like that for sure. And, for me, I went with really the complete opposite spectrum when you turn in terms of like lesser known. I went with the TUF 29 winner, the return of TUF winner, Brian Battle. He's fighting Tresean Gore here. This was originally slated to be the finale of the middleweights for TUF. Tresean Gore was out with an injury. Gilbert Urbina stepped in. Brian Battle submitted him in the second round. So this is technically his UFC, well, kind of his UFC debut in a way. And the same for Tresean Gore. But at plus 130, when I watched the season, Tresean Gore has that power. And he can really stalk people down and enforce his will in a way. But to me, Brian Battle showed me so much more in terms of like all around skill set, in terms of, MMA, the grappling, the striking. He's just more weapons is what it came off to me as. So why he might not have the power, and that's why I think Trayshawn Gore is the favorite here at minus 167. I think at plus 130 for Brian Battle, the skill set he showed me really makes me lean toward him in this one. I think it's actually going to be a really fun fight. I'm excited that they finally get to do it. But yeah, Brian Battle, my dog of the week, and a badass name, by the way.
I know I didn't watch this season of the Ultimate Fighter, but what stuck out to me when I was kind of looking at these two was the experience factor. I mean, Brian Battle's 7-1, I think, or 6-1.
6-1, yep.
Over double the fights of his opponent, Trayshawn Gore, who's only 3-0-1, I think, or something like that. So
yeah,
that definitely has to play a factor here. And based off of what you're saying, I could totally see why you might side that way, just because Battle has more experience and he already looks like a more complete fighter from what we've seen. But you never know with the guy who has that one-punch ability like Trayshawn Gore.
Exactly. That's what makes it dangerous.
So last but not least, the below-average bet slip, Dominic. It's a chance for redemption this week.
We need it.
And you know what? What I'm glad about is we're not going head-to-head. That's really what set us...
That sucked, yeah.
That, when we're doing this together, and, we're kind of just combining our picks, inevitably it's going to happen.
Yeah.
We don't agree all the time.
Right.
But to be basically going head-to-head for every fight that we put on our bet slip, it was like, well, I guess we're not going to really be plus money this week overall.
Yeah, exactly.
When we put these bets in, it's not like me and Dominic are splitting a pot. I mean, we keep ours separate when we put them in, but when we're putting it together, the below-average Joe's standings for the year,
yes,
it just hurts when you're going head-to-head like that. It's hard to get any plus money out of that.
But none of that this week.
Exactly. So I'm going to start with my parlay.
Yeah.
We each got 3 plays. I got a parlay, 3 legs, plus 186 overall. Shavkat Rakhmonov on the money line. I mean, he's the biggest prospect on the card. He does have a tough matchup. Carlston Harris is being severely overlooked. I don't think the odds are necessarily overlooking him. I think the odds are pretty fair. But I think the community, I think a lot of the people watching this card are overlooking him. I get it. I love Rakhmonov. I think this guy's a future champion or a future title challenger. Carlston Harris isn't far from that, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
And I do think that that's potentially going to be shown here. I think this fight might be closer than we think. That's why I didn't really put any sort of prop bet on Rakhmonov. I didn't look for him to get a finish. I'm putting him on a parlay. I am putting 2 units down on this parlay. Also on the money line, Dennis Bondar. I really like his explosiveness at flyweight. Going up against Malcolm Gordon, who's had a very suspect chin. And for Bondar, who is very explosive and I just think has a lot of potential, very well-rounded as well. But I do see him, if he wins that, I think he does it on the feet. And then last one, this one is actually maybe a little riskier than I usually would go for a women's fight. But a lot of times women, overall their fights go to a decision at over 50% of the time. Alexis Davis, Julia Stoliarenko, to go to distance is the third leg here. Doesn't matter who wins, just has to go to distance. Now Julia actually has finished fights at a decent rate, so it makes it a little dangerous, but she is the underdog here. Alexis Davis, been in this division a long time. I'm not saying she's going to win because of that, but I think that makes her equipped to get to the judges' scorecards like she's done so many times before. 2 units down. It's going to make or break us and me this week, I think, for sure.
Yeah, based off of how my parlay turned out last time, I'm going to take a week off of that. But you had Shavkat Rakhmonov in your parlay. I've got him here with a prop bet. I'm going Rakhmonov to win by finish at plus 100. I was surprised it was sitting there at plus money because he has 14 wins, 14 finishes, and it's perfectly split at 7 KOs, 7 submissions. And I know Carlston Harris is super tough. I think he's being overlooked as well, and it's going to feel like I'm overlooking him because I'm picking Rakhmonov to finish him. But I just think this kid's potential is insane. You talked about him on our most recent Reddit roundtable a couple weeks ago. Carlson Harris's last loss was via TKO, so I just think there's potential there for Rachmanov, even if it's not via KO. Just a finish in general. He's super well-rounded, an absolute stud that's really coming into his all right now. Tons of momentum. Plus 100. I'm all over it.
Go ahead with your second.
Yeah, so the other one, the last two are go to distance, but we have one that's similar. So this one, actually, I'm going back to the Ultimate Fighter 29 matchup, Tresean Gore versus Brian Battle, to go the distance at plus 115. Each only have one decision victory as a pro. So you're probably thinking, well, what are you doing? These guys are both finishers through their core. This is a risky one. But again, I watched every episode of The Ultimate Fighter, and they both had decisions during the show. And I know that they only do like the 2-round stuff, and they do 3 rounds later on into the show. But both guys did go the distance a couple of times in their own right. I feel like they were the most evenly matched middleweights during the show, and especially a few months removed, I still feel like they're super evenly matched. This was, again, the go-to as the middleweight finale if it wasn't for Gore getting hurt. I think this is going to be a tit-for-tat battle, but one where a finish isn't going to come to play. I don't think the power of Gore can finish Battle, but I think Gore's so damn tough that I don't know if Battle is going to be able to finish him. So at plus 115, go the distance.
I got another prop here, plus 180. Philip Rowe by KO, TKO, or DQ. High finishing rate from Philip Rowe. And for his opponent, Jason Witt, who is coming off a win against Brian Barberena. A pretty awesome fight that was.
Yes.
And one that he showed a better chin than he has in the past. But unfortunately, that is an outlier for him. Is when his chin gets tested, he typically is not able to hold up to the shots. And while Philip Rowe may not necessarily have the biggest power in this division, he does have a 5-inch height advantage, and Dominic, he's got a 10-inch reach advantage.
That's insane.
You just never see that, and typically when you do, it doesn't usually go the other guy's favor very often. So while Jason Witt, I think for him, if he's able to close that distance and able to take this fight to the ground, he's going to win this fight. And that's why the odds are pretty close, actually.
Yeah.
But for Philip Rowe, I mean, he's looked okay in his UFC outing so far. I think he's 1-1. His win, he looked real good. His loss, he looked a little suspect. So I mean, you kind of don't know what you're gonna get.
Mm-hmm.
But I look for Jason Witt. I've seen more holes in his game. I've seen more opportunities for Philip Rowe to really win this fight pretty convincingly, and I just don't think Jason Witt will be able to close that distance, and I think because of that, Philip Rowe going to get a finish here via KO TKO.
Okay, I see it.
And then our last one, we both had the same one.
This is the first time this has happened through 3 nosebleeds.
Technically, this will be 2 units.
That's true.
It'll be a 2-unit bet here. So Hermansson versus Strickland.
Yes.
We are predicting this fight to go the distance at plus 100, essentially a pick-em. It's essentially 1-for-1, and I mean, everything I've said previously you could kind of put in here. I think this fight's very close.
Yeah.
Both guys can finish a fight, and that does kind of concern me that maybe one of these guys is going to be really motivated to make that kind of performance they need to push themselves into a title shot, but I really see both kind of sticking to what they know best, and what they know best is to kind of deliver punishment over the course of 5 rounds,
right?
3 rounds, whatever their fight is. So,
yeah.
Not putting a winner on here. I do like I said, my underdog was Hermansson, but I don't like him enough to where I'm putting him here. I'm just going to go straight for it to go to a decision. Doesn't matter the winner.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I agree. We're both placing the same bet on the same prop, and it's just, they have a combined 15 decision victories. It's not that they're not finishers, like Noah said. I just feel like the way that these two match up, it's so hard to envision a finish and how it could potentially happen. And for that reason, being that we've seen them go multiple times the distance, not really waver, both have pretty solid cardio, I just think it could be a really fun back-and-forth scrap for 5 rounds, man. Or one-sided, as you said, but decision nevertheless.
Yeah, I've said earlier, both guys very durable. So even if this fight's one-sided as hell, all it's got to do is get to the judges' scorecards.
Right.
But that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Nosebleeds. What plays are you guys placing this week? What sportsbook are you using? Just a reminder, we're kind of doing a half and half thing right now. We've been wanting to use Barstool Sportsbook. The only problem is when we record, which we're recording on Wednesday.
Yep.
They don't have the majority of their props in place. So it kind of limits us to what we can do there.
Yeah.
DraftKings has more of those handy, probably because they're the partner of the UFC. So I think moving forward, we're going to start transitioning over to DraftKings. We love you, Barstool. No disrespect. But for this week, we kind of did as I hit my mic, we kind of did a mix of the two. But next week, it'll be a little more consistent. But let us know what plays you're making, what sportsbook you're using. And, until then, Dominic, tell them where they can find you on social media.
Find me on Twitter, on Instagram, at DSlee14. More importantly, go follow, go engage, go interact with us, with the show, on Twitter, on Instagram, at BAJ_MMA podcast.
For me, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, at NTBaker_. If you go to the link in my bio, there is a link tree, which presents you a list of links to all the platforms the podcast is on, along with the social media platforms.
Oh, yeah, I'm not used to doing that part. Yeah.
That includes...
It's not limited to.
No, kind of is.
A little bit.
The Twitter, the Instagram, the YouTube channel, and Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcast. It's all on there. And there's a couple links for today's...
the podcast sponsor. So not the Nosebleeds sponsor. But if there's anybody out there that wants to sponsor the Nosebleeds, you're welcome. Anyway, the podcast sponsor, Anchor. Shout out to Anchor.
There you go. First, leaving a voice message. We're getting lonely over here, people.
I'm getting sick of it.
Second, any and all support is appreciated, but there is a link on there if you'd like to leave any sort of monthly contribution. All that money would be very much appreciated. But that's it. We're out. We'll see you guys in a week.